Lisa, could you check and see if Peggy's up, please?
All right. And prior to the city hall at 3:45, no.
Nothing.
All right. Said she's coming, so.
Yeah, she told me she had it on her calendar. Last time I did. No, Martha something. Sorry, guys.
Richie Cunningham.
It was. Okay, I'll just go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thank you for coming today for the Historic Design Review Board meeting. Quick roll call. Arnold Schofield here. Martha Jane Gentry is absent. Rick Zingray
Here.
Stacy Wood. Here. And I understand Peggy Cummings is on the way. But what we're going to do first, we have two certificates. One dealing with the painting of the former Country Cupboard building on North Main. And the owner has submitted a certificate, and the paint color that he wants to use almost matches what is already there. He's also checked with the HIPPO, which he technically, painting has been turned over to design review, but I'm glad that he did, and they don't have any adverse action. So, I guess I would entertain a motion to.
Yeah, I'll entertain him. I'll move to accept the paint colors as provided.
Second that.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Done deal. I'll fill this out later. Moving right along, the next one, and we have the packet here. Fort Scott Pavilion Project, and article in the newspaper about it. I appreciate that article in the paper. And I guess our city manager is going to comment. Brad?
Oh, I was.
Oh, okay. All right, well, no, that's all right, sir. We usually,
Not my project.
all right, usually have a representative, from each project that does.
Is there anyone here representing the group?
No.
Well,
Okay, then, excellent article in the newspaper about it, and we thank the paper for doing that. It covered all of the things. And we have in the package, it's the three bids from the different sizes and the cost, and a photograph of the design. And so I would ask Rick and Stacy and Peggy, if she gets here, comments on it. And Brad, since you're here, I guess we'll have to ask you questions or comments. That's all right. Okay, thank you. Rick?
Well, I guess what is it about this particular structure that you feel contextualizes with the downtown historic district? To me, it seems like a farm building in the middle of downtown, and you know, there was nothing here given in any way architecturally to the nature of the downtown area. And I understand that you guys solicited bids for this, but, you know, what direction were the bidders given in terms of providing something that was contextual? They just said, hey, man, give us a metal building that's this big and go to town, or this is, I mean, okay. And I mean, as far as like commenting on, all I can say is I don't think it's appropriate, if that's all we're being asked. You know, I don't think it's appropriate just because there's nothing about it that speaks to the nature of the downtown. You know, I think if we're going to be generating a structure of this size downtown, I'd like to see a rendering in context with the area just to see how it impacts the view shed of the fort. Um, you know, I'd also, I guess, I would like to see something about it that is, you know, in terms of use of materials or something that's more in keeping, some masonry. And I realize it would cost more, but you know, there's just not a whole lot here to take action on. And you know, I don't know, I don't know what about this is appropriate. I mean, does anybody else want to kick in here? Jason?
Yeah, I mean, there's just pretty, from what I understand from when Josh was here, they are just trying to get a big, I don't think this is fine.
Very preliminary.
Yeah, I don't
So-
think they're ready for us to take action. Not
It
sure.
But-
looks like there's sizes also.
Right. Right.
What are we being asked to do here? That's what I'm curious is like.
Well, there's, there is a description of the project, and there are 3 bids that the commissioners are going to consider tomorrow night.
Yes, if I could speak, I would, as a group, I would ask, what question this group, civilian group, what question would you have for them? What you said, it doesn't blend in any downtown.
Right.
So that would be a question, is what are you going to do with this, make it fit into our
Right.
downtown?
Right.
And I think that I think it would probably be appropriate for them to talk to their architect about getting or their designer, whatever they're using, about getting some kind of a rendering that shows this structure. And so I guess so far they've gone, hey guys, what's it going to cost for a building that's 70 by 100 to 70 by 150? And then we're like, okay, we're going to, based on these numbers, think we can afford X, Y, or Z. I don't know. But these numbers really aren't indicative of the project as a whole. And this is kind of what I was suggesting to Josh the other day. There's more to a metal building project than just the building itself. There's foundations involved. I presume they'll want some kind of lighting. There's really, I don't know if there's anything in this bid packet about finishes. Is it going to be, is steel going to be just red iron, or is it going to be painted? Are they going to put liner panel up underneath the purlins of the roof to keep birds from nesting in there? You know, will there be power provided to the facility as a whole so that guys who are there plug in a refrigerator or some sort of a device at their station? Just stuff like that. It's part of the design of a building that hasn't really been addressed with. But as our part, to me, what I think is probably the most important for us is, you know, if they want to go with a pre-engineered steel structure, okay, maybe they should consider doing something with it that uses masonry or something to encapsulate the columns. I guess I would like to see how the edge detailing of the roof is being done. Is there going to be any kind of siding element put on this thing? How does that tie in with? So you can do. I mean, it doesn't have to be wood or, you know, steel's great. It's fine for a long span like that. But just saying we're going to put up a bed.
Yeah, I'm saying, I feel like from Josh's last conversation, they're not there yet. I think prices to
Okay.
know where they're at with.
Okay. Right, just a couple of comments and try to put it in in questions for you, Brad.
Mhm.
I mean, as submitted, it is not, in my opinion, it is not compatible with the historic district and the historic integrity and the environment, and the viewscape that the building is going to impact and create. Now, I guess that's a statement, not a question, but I wish that the structure would be more compatible with the existing architecture and, and the environment of the historic district. Right now, if this were to remain as it is for submission by the commission to approve or disapprove, it's not compatible. It just doesn't fit. Now, looking back over all the proposals I've seen, okay, and I'm sure the city probably has these on file on the computer, but to answer, look at Rick's question, on the original proposal, where it was going to be originally, okay, in the center of
Mhm.
Skubitz Plaza, there are two architectural renderings of what they thought it would look
Yes.
like. And I call them piers or columns, if they were steel, they were encased with wood, okay? And the roof itself was not black, it was painted in a red color that would be compatible with the architecture of the surrounding buildings. Well, these were drawings prepared by the Department of Agriculture, and they were part of an original proposal. And of course, decisions were made to move it from the center of Skubitz Plaza, which I agree with 100%, to not its present location, but there is a drawing that shows it entirely on the grass, where the parking lot is, and it shows it entirely on the grass between the blockhouse and the parking lot. And the vendors in their pickups could back up to the west side of it, unload, and then be involved. Well, that's changed too. Now, the latest addition is it covering the parking lot. Okay, get to expense. There are 3 bids in this package that we've received, and I'm not going to quote them, from the highest to the middle to the lowest. And a concern from the commissioners was, okay, could we reduce the size and reduce the cost? What I'm politely asking is this: if the size were reduced and there was a cost savings, could they use that cost savings money to adapt the structure, encase the piers and come up with a different color for the roof? I mean, that is a question. Because if the highest bid was accepted for the metal structure, there is no apparent funding that could be used for those modifications to the structure. But when you look at the bids, I think the middle bid is like maybe 25,000 less than the first one, and the last bid is even less than that. So I guess a question is, if the commission were to accept the lowest or the middle bid, could the money that they saved as opposed to the original, the big bid, the highest bid, could that money be used to encase these piers with wood? That would be the cheapest, Another alternative would be brick, gonna be more expensive. And then a final possibility would be stone, which would be very expensive compared to the wood. But if they selected to do that, to encase the piers with wood or brick and not have the roof painted black, but paint it, and they're considering in the proposal, they haven't decided on what color. I'm trying to find it in here. But there's a page of colors in here. And y'all, the commissioners are gonna decide what color they want to paint it. And I'm politely suggesting that, here it is. And this is the color scheme that the commissioners are gonna consider tomorrow night, or
Got,
the meeting. If not tomorrow night, at the future meeting. But what I'm politely saying is, this center, this dark red one, to me, would be more compatible with the existing brick structures. But that's just a personal opinion. I just don't think it should be black. Now, there are other colors here you could choose from, certainly. And, are those questions, I mean, what you would consider as questions?
Are they gonna consider awarding the?
I don't believe so, no. I don't believe so. And we've got a couple commissioners here, but this is a matching grant that we're getting, the T-Mobile.
Okay.
So, if it goes over that match, goes over that total, there's gotta be some decisions made. Because where's that money coming from?
I see.
So, right now, we don't have that in the budget. So it could be fundraisers, it could be whatever. So Rob's on the phone now, so he might be able to enlighten a little bit, Rob Harrington. But, with this being a matching grant, as of right now, all we're giving is that match,
And the grant says in the pay was 50,000.
50,000,
Matching grant is
100,000. It'll be 100,000.
total 100,000, and anything over that, we're gonna have to raise the money.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Just saying.
I mean, briefly, because I think, I was the one that helped them get that grant. You know about that, right?
That was before me, but yes.
Okay, so what we did, what originally was that it was gonna be located in that grass area along the eastern edge of the parking lot. The idea was, we were gonna have a masonry structure that was about, I think, I'm gonna say about 25 by 25. It was like a four-legged arched structure with a roof on it, okay? And then going off of that were two wings, one going north and one going south. Each wing was a place for vendors to set up. Now, on the west side, they could back their vehicles up under kind of an overhanging
Right.
eave, unload their vehicles, and they could set their tables up. And people who were coming to use the service would come in through that center arch and then go north or south to the vendors lined up along the thing, be undercover. Then they could have also set vendors up across on the other side of it, but those vendors wouldn't be able to just back their vehicles in as easily. That was the idea when we did this. When the ladies, Rachel, I believe, and I can't remember who it was I was talking to at the time, but when they asked me, like, how much did I think this was going to cost, okay, I explained to them it was probably going to cost somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million, okay? And they were like, well, we're going to get a $50,000 grant. I said, well, this is not going to cover it, okay? So if you guys are going to do something, either, obviously you're going to have to raise more funds, but you also might want to consider doing something in phases, okay? And so what we talked about, and again, I don't even know if they could do it for $100,000. What we talked about at the time was, why don't we build this arch thing in the center, okay? It was online with the blockhouse, essentially, and sort of framed that, get that done with the grant funding, if possible, and then continue to raise funds to build the wings, basically. So the structure for those guys, as I was looking at it, was, it could be a steel structure, but basically they were brick-wrapped columns, basically. And they were spaced about, I think, 20 foot on center, so I could have two vendors in between each column group. There could be power brought on the columns to provide the vendors with power if they wanted it. There was water. And then on the other side, where we're now sort of building the splash pad, there was a plaza area there for people to sort of hang out if they want, or more vendors could set up under their own little tents or something. But now that's sort of being developed as a park area. That was kind of the original concept. The idea of building this out over the parking lot like that, I mean, it takes advantage of the parking, which is awesome. And I guess it affords the vendors, I guess, the opportunity to be completely undercover when they can pull in and back into their spots, I suppose. But it also, what it suggests is this building is going to be ginormous, okay, in the presence of that spot. Whereas what I was proposing was something in scale very similar to the blockhouse in terms of its aesthetic. It wasn't that tall, it wasn't that big, but it was something where the vendors could sort of get undercover and do their thing. My concern about this, if you're talking about how we're going to design this thing, is this building going to be, 20 feet tall? Columns, how tall are these columns going to be? This one drawing showed them sitting on cylindrical
Base,
concrete piers, right?
Right.
For each column frame or each frame element for the building, so that at the north end, if those are sticking out of the ground this far, I'm not exactly sure how they were planning to do it, but I mean, it suggests that the building is going to be quite tall. going down there.
The drawing in the paper and this one indicates the height, not to the peak, but to the edge is like 15 feet,
Yes,
15 and a half feet high.
15.6, it
Like
looks like.
6. And then it would be a little higher at the peak because of strip.
Yeah, but let's say that's at the south end, 15-foot eve height. Okay, but when it gets down to the north end, where there appears to be, according to this, maybe 4 feet of drop, is it then going to be sticking out of the ground 20 feet?
To make it level.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, this is something. I mean, I'm not necessarily against the notion of doing that. I really would like somebody to take the initiative to design it and then put it out for bid. I mean, that's how processes like this usually go. Is that somebody designs a concept and it's presented to the bidders, and then the bidders bid to it. If you go the route that you guys have chosen here, where you go, hey, you give us something, that's called the design build idea, but the parameters given to the bidder need to be explained that part of this design build proposal needs to include detailed renderings of your proposed solution so we can take action. And you need to let them know that if aesthetics are part of the concern, which they should be,
Right.
that needs to be demonstrated in the design, not just I want a proposal for a pre-engineered frame building with a metal roof on it. You guys, I mean, what you've gotten is a price for a column. Yes, sir. You have a question?
No, I just wanted to address that. We did originally do a design, when we brought it to they decided that other option. Metal, at a site, and contractors to come out and talk with us. At that site, some said it would be cheaper to go metal. They all had different ideas. So we asked them all, and Jason, send back their bid. This one that you see, of course, is based off of the time that we put forth as the committee, not the one up to get. Between both of these projects, another organization had taken hold of it, ran with it for about a year. They changed the location down to the east, put it right in front of the fort.
Right.
At that time, the fort had issues with blocking the line of the fort
Right.
from the highway and from Wall Street.
Right.
So the project was brought by that organization, up by a new committee.
Right.
We decided to move back to the original location. Wanted to take a look at something similar to what they did in our Missouri Fair Farmers Market. So we reached out to that company. This is the company that did that structure. So this was the idea that we had moving forward. Make it an all-black structure. Because it's somewhat, not in reality, like a wrought iron also not interfere with the sightline of the forest, not create some structure around that plaza. That is also the exact location of the original farmer's market in the early 1900s.
Right, right.
Can I make one suggestion then? If you're going off of Lamar's, maybe take pictures of that one and bring that with you.
Do, but their structure will be nothing like
Oh,
ours
okay.
at this point. They have filled it in, put lights, LED lights all underneath it, locked in both ends.
Well, hey, you might sell some people on that then.
Well,
this is what I'm wondering, it's like-
Requested that we keep the light disturbance to
Yeah.
a minimum
right,
on
right.
that end, so we want to make sure that it's included in all the decisions that we make going. That's why we have gone towards what we have gone for, based on
Right.
going back and forth with them and trying to find something that will work for everyone, including the farmer's market, and yet still provide something.
I guess in the form of a question, okay? But first was a statement. After seeing this drawing, if one drives south to Pittsburgh, just south of the old high school on Broadway, if you have a look there, there's a farmer's pavilion, which is not exactly the same, but it's similar. It's an all-metal structure with metal piers or posts holding it up. Now, it's not painted black, and I understand that. But that's the nearest thing that I could see within a close distance. I mean, it's 30 miles, but, or so. But that is similar to what this would be. And I guess our question for Brad and for the commissioners, and thank you, we have two commissioners here. Three, I'm sorry. Thank you, ma'am. I'm sorry. But we have three commissioners here. To echo what Rick and Stacy have said, it would be nice if we could see a design drawing of what it's going to look like, and that's a request. And in addition to that, if on these three bids that you have, which I've suggested before you came in, Commissioner Wells, and that is, if you accept one of the smaller bids, you will save X number of thousands of dollars. Well, if you save that number of thousands of dollars, granted, we don't have the money, we're going to have to get some more money. But if that money that's saved for a smaller structure, the question is, could not that be used to make it more compatible with the historic integrity of the district? And by doing so, encasing those posts, metal posts, with wood or brick, and on your color scheme that you're already going to consider, rather than black, I would suggest a dark red to be compatible with the existing brick structures that surround it. And if you accept the middle bid or the lowest bid for the smaller size structure, then that is going to reduce the impact on the view shed when you stand on the opposite side of National Avenue and you look east, because it would be smaller in size or scope, so it would be less of an impact on what I call the view shed or the viewscape. Because as submitted, as suggested right now, all three of us have politely said, I think, that this is not compatible with the historic integrity of the environment. Even if it was painted black and similar to wrought iron, that's not even close. So the question is, can you adapt one of those bids, save money, and use that money to make it more acceptable?
Would not be able to, in essence, save any money as we have the money yet project
Right,
if we did the project, still based on starting at that south end of the parking lot and addition later, continue out and
Okay.
cover that whole parking lot. I am perfectly happy with red color if that's what this board would suggest. I personally do not care what color it is. I just want it to fit in well with
Right.
the area.
right.
I personally would suggest having the columns and they're a limestone
Well,
to match the columns at the fort, but that would be my
no,
personal.
understood.
I'd be happy with about brick or something
No.
around it too.
Understood. I listed three alternatives. Wood would be the most inexpensive, then brick, and then stone. And the stone would be most expensive, I would think. But I guess what we're asking is,
Rendering. what it's gonna look like.
would you please come back to us with a rendering of what it might look like with the suggestions or questions we've asked? Because personally, this one that's submitted and is part of it is just not compatible with it's not compatible with the historic architecture or integrity of the respective historic district.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, Commissioner.
Can I speak?
Yeah,
Hey, Rob, before you start, this is Tim Benson. I just had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the status of the grant, and it shouldn't be the be-all, end-all deciding factor on what we've been, what is the timeline and the expiration date for taking away?
Good.
Honestly, Tim, that timeline passed in October, but I think they just want the money, they just want the project completed as soon as possible. Jody had got an extension, but I don't know exactly what the extension was because that was not passed on to me on what the extension she got was. But the initial date that had to be built by was October of 22, I believe. So we're way past the initial concept and build date. But I don't know what I can't tell you exactly what the expansion of that was. We're probably lucky we haven't had to pay back the money yet, to be honest with you. But I think they really want to see the project happen because it is something that would benefit this community greatly. So.
Yeah, that was my question. I mean, I also would like, how does it go? Fit into it, and so what I'm wondering I can tell you, I believe, based on the three bids that came back in, that even the lowest one,
It's
we don't
high.
have the funds
Right,
budgeted to even
right.
build the lowest one in its present state, so, might even want to look at getting that rendering. But we can take the original frame, talking about doing now, maybe a different colored roof. Once it's up, then we would go to put bricks or wood or whatever on the column. My only concern is the taxpayer, myself, and having this grant, that we don't opportunity to pass, but it does need the charm of our.
When
Thank you.
we did the one in Pittsburgh, that was a group of farmers locally who had an organization. They parlayed some money amongst their group. They worked with the city of Pittsburgh and rural development and CDBG and used that initial funding that they were able to gather as a group as sort of part of a grant match for a CDBG grant and a rural development grant that helped them fund the project. As it happened, it still came in over budget for what they wanted. They originally wanted a concessionary and restrooms. They wanted to wrap their columns in masonry, but weren't able to afford that. So they had to make some hard choices in the end too. But that building, it sets off of the road. I mean, it's not. This is a very prominent location, and I think we need to be very careful about what we put there. It needs to really contextualize with the city, and a pre-engineered frame structure like this is just not going to hit it, I'm afraid. I'm very concerned about that.
Right.
That, and as far as like, could you use the grant funds from T-Mobile to help the city as a grant match? I don't know. I'm not sure who you guys are working with these days on your grant applications, if it's still regional planning or whomever it is, but
Well,
it's a thought.
So,
I have another question, and then Stacy may have some. Okay.
Rob?
can I, okay, so a couple things I want to touch base on, and I apologize for not being there, but I was already scheduled to be at a conference, in Mulvane. So, one thing is, what, your drawing that you'd like us to get, I mean, I obviously would say that that's not going to be free. So what are we looking at in cost for that? Does the committee believe? Mr. Zingray, I mean, you might be able to tell me how much would a conceptual drawing cost me?
Well, it'd be a couple $1,000s probably, because part of that design process would involve coming up with a plan and a budget. I think, at some point you guys need to say, we can allocate, how much money can we allocate to this job? And then you can very quickly say, which is what I tried to tell Rachel and the other young lady before, was there wasn't a whole lot of point in going for this grant if they were going to get $50,000 and the project was going to cost close to $1 million. Again, I do this a lot, so I know what this stuff costs if it's going to be done correctly. If you're gonna try to piece it together, I'm okay, but I think that would suggest phases, and then you probably ought to have a master plan. If you're gonna go out for a grant, okay, the grant application process will require you to work with an architect or someone, or an engineer or somebody, to develop what's called a preliminary architectural report. And that report would have a plan, kind of like what you've got here, and a rendering and a budget that suggests that yes, if we're given these grant funds, we will be able to actually accomplish what we were set out to do. Frankly, $50,000 was never enough to build a farmer's market. That was, I thought it was a great idea. I think it'd be a great asset to have a formal place in Fort Scott there on Scubitz Plaza. That's the great location for it. There's so many pluses, honestly. It just was never enough money to do the job. So I think there probably needs to be some head scratching on what are we looking at in terms of a project? What's it going to cost? And I think, I understand that you guys you don't want to hire architects and engineers because we cost money, but that's our job, is basically coming up with preliminary plans and cost estimates and working with the clients to get them to a point where they can go, this project is feasible or it's not feasible. The way you guys are kind of going about it is kind of like, we're going to go to the builders and ask them for ideas, and then they're going to throw out numbers and whatever. But those numbers are not based on necessarily design solution.
Actually, Earl's Engineering has looked at it. So we've had an engineering firm look at it, Mr. Zingray, and bring back a design.
Yeah, that's not a design. Yeah,
What you're seeing is, that's one of the written, Jason has more documents available.
Okay.
I was unaware that this was happening at 4 o'clock. I could not
Right.
make sure all the proper paperwork was prepared for y'all.
Right.
We have that paperwork. We have a rendering that shows difference from the original one that would have blocked line of the fourth location where we put it, so where it's not blocking the way that brick structure would have. Work all the way until you out, down from the sidewalk edge in front of the stout building.
Okay.
That's when the building would side of that.
Rob, do you have another comment you want to make?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Schofield. I appreciate it. Again, I know this is terrible doing it over the phone. But the other comment I wanted to make, and I just want to, I'm trying to say this, well, I have two. First of all, I want to take time as well, as it was reported back to me that I may have came across rude to the group the last time I was there, and I want to take time to apologize if I did. If any of you felt that I was rude to you, I do apologize. I wasn't raised that way, and so I want to say I do apologize for that. I never intended to be that, but I must have come across that way. So again, I apologize. So second thing I want to say is, and I'm not trying to be rude, but right now we have literally a parking lot, and that's it. And I believe that what we're trying to do is trying to bring life to an area of Scubitz Plaza, to an area of downtown that lacks it. Other than during a couple times a year, Mr. Van Hookie's there, so good old days. There's life down at that parking lot, and then there's some stuff that happens around the Casa event. But other than that, it's really just a parking lot, and there's nothing that really ties that piece of area to anything in downtown. And I really believe what we're trying to do as a committee is trying to bring something there that will bring the farmers market every weekend, every week, really, to that area, attract visitors to that area, and hopefully they go across and eat at New Grill, go down to the art studio at the Artificers, walk down to E3 and those businesses, and try to bring some commerce to our downtown. But not only that, is bring a place where we can come together as a community. We do not have an amphitheater or anything like that downtown, and this pavilion could act as that. We could bring bands in that are covered and bring people in to downtown and bring music. And to me, it's an area that will bring life to what is just now what is just a parking lot.
Right.
It'll bring some life to it, and I've never been a guy that looks at the cost today and say, well, 190,000, that's a lot of money. It is a lot of money. I know it's a lot of money, and I'm a taxpayer as well. But what I can tell you is that 10, 20 years from now, the $190,000 we spend today is going to be returned to us. And I'm not going to give a number. I would love to say tenfold, because of the work we put in today to bring life to an area that's right now just a concrete slab where cars park. And I know and I understand where you're coming from with history. I'm a huge history fanatic. You can ask my wife, my son. I love history, and I love the history of Fort Scott. But right now, the dollars are hindering us to build something with wood or with stone or with brick. And I think just doing half the parking lot, it wouldn't look finished. It would look half done. And so that's why I've always been a proponent of doing the entire parking lot all together. And if I have to go out on the corner with a sign that says, please build my farmer's market, I will, to whatever I have to do to raise the funds for this. And that's how strongly I feel about this project.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you.
A lot of time, I apologize, but there's my 2 cents.
Thank you. I just have one, based on discussion, I have one question or comment in the form of a question. Would the committee consider a phase project, okay? Now, when I say phase project, what I'm referring to is the design that was originally submitted, which has 2 wings and it has a center. And the center has a slightly peaked roof on it. Now, if you took that center part that was illustrated in the original drawing, and if you took that center part and constructed that center park, and then eventually getting the money to do 1 wing and then another wing, and that center part would look very nice architecturally. It would be compatible, and that's just a thought, if you would consider doing that, as opposed to the entire project, which is going to cost a lot more, and with the matching funds that city manager and Commissioner Van Hockey has raised, if you took that, and I'm pulling this out because it says the grant was $50,000. Well, if you have a match of 50,000, that's 100,000, and that conceivably might build that center section. And then go on from there. But in order to do that, you would need a master plan and how you wanted to do that progressively and things like that. But that's just a question for the committee to consider.
We will gladly accept that. I can tell you from talking with the committee that that design as it was felt much the sight line of the court, therefore we not impede
Right,
that
understood.
giant brick structure right there.
Well,
Really blocks the blockhouse and
Right.
everything you look at from that side of the street.
yes, sir. But if it was made smaller and you had a smaller concept of that, it might cost less.
We are looking at putting a brick or structure, some kind of structure there. Talked about it being brick. That will be the restroom facility, and that will be part of a second phase on the splash pad
Right,
project.
right.
And that's gonna go in about that same location that you're talking about, and it will be a smaller structure, will look like.
No, the smaller structure I'm talking about, if it were in the center of the parking lot right now, that would not, right, that's where it would be, in the center, and then you have both wings. The other thing that would help us considerably, which I've asked in the past for, Commissioner Wells, since you brought up the restroom facility, it would be very nice if we could see a spatial arranged drawing that shows that area with the splash pad, the restroom building, and the blockhouse, and where the farmer's market would go. That's just one drawing that would show the spatial arrangement of all of these things to make sure that everything fits. And that would be part of a master plan, for the lack of a better term, for that area.
Yes, sir.
And that's a question for that.
No, that's an excellent idea and a reasonable question, and that gets accomplished.
We have any other comments?
Well, and I'll just throw out another thing. I've done some work in the city of Osawatomie recently, and I'm not sure exactly how they did this, but they got sort of involved with an architectural firm, I believe out of Wichita, who was going around to multiple cities around Kansas and offering sort of a comprehensive design solutions for various downtown areas. And so the cost of entry to get a sort of a comprehensive plan for their downtown was pretty low. And they gave them a direction that they could head. But the design elements that were part of that solution were well conceived because it was done by designers. That's one option. I've also heard in the past of like, sometimes you can maybe go to a college, like Kansas State University has a School of Architecture, Kansas University has a School of Architecture, and say, hey, would you consider for your 4th or 5th year students a design project that's sort of a real hands-on design project. So they would say, okay, we're going to come in here as a group, we're going to gather some information, and then we're going to put together, each student or group of students, however they want to set it up, would prepare an idea for you guys to consider. But again, it's not costing you money to have that done. And I guess the advantage of a school, if they're willing to do it, would be you get lots of ideas. You might get 3 or 4 that you could look at and go, these seem feasible. And you can tell, or you should be able to tell them that, hey, we don't have all the money in the world. A solution that could be phased would be desirable. Good point. Arnold made a good point. If you're thinking about building additional structures in there, you need to master plan the whole shebang. You got the splash pad, and that's kind of going in the spot, and then it's going to occupy that space, and then there's going to be trees and a pathway and some more little play areas. Those are going to occupy space. At some point, there might be some sort of enclosure made around that splash pad. I'm just, I have concerns about kids wandering out into the street while they're playing.
Slow 5-mile-an-hour street there.
Yes, absolutely.
Fast at all.
I've seen people drive through there pretty quickly, and
Well, they should.
I know, but I'm just saying, I've walked that pathway many times, and yeah, people do come through. And if there's cars parked, and a child is running between the cars, they're not going to have a reaction. I mean, I'm just saying, if you look at
That's a worry.
those parks,
Too, is they run out of the 4th cars and into that. So I completely.
It's a thing. So, I mean, it may come up at a later date that you guys want to expose that. So, you know, I guess thinking about, if you want to develop this area, you know, and I don't know if T-Mobile would let you use that money to do something smaller of a different nature. I don't know. I mean, they would sort of
We would have to reapply for the grant and it's probably.
lose.
It has to be
Yeah.
for its original purpose and it's. So.
I just think there's time.
Stacy, anything else? Before we adjourn, I would ask, do any of the commissioners or Superintendent Jaworski want to share some things that you haven't done already? Okay? Matt?
I would simply say that we have had an engineer, drawings, we have down about the whole process on doing drawings, everything out for bid that you come today.
Right.
Is the preliminary first phase of the project. Want to do cover that entire parking lot, create a farmer's market that will be viable for the current people that have growth and to not impact their business. This will also allow the parking to be opened up for the court on the east end of
Right.
Steuben's Plaza. There are many, many benefits for this location, including the fact it chose this particular location because it is not in the historic district, not in the national district.
No. We have,
It's one of the few spots in the downtown, there are no historic. Doesn't mean want to in any way at all put something not complement all of the surrounding. But at the same time, you have to keep in mind cost,
Right.
time. And as we all on this project, we watched the prices go through
Right.
the roof on a project that we could have done too. They had moved forward.
Right.
We would not be at.
thank you, Commissioner Wells. I just would close by asking the commissioners and our city manager. City manager asked for questions from us. And we submitted, I think, 4 to 6 questions for the commissioners and the committee to consider. Having said that, I hope we could see a rendering of what it's going to look like beyond this. And
Yeah, like maybe show it from standing across the street in front of Luther's looking towards the fort.
There is one.
Okay,
And
well-
one, I'm sorry, we were unable to.
Okay, that'd be
But-
helpful, and then maybe the same
I
direction,
think
opposite direction.
when you're ready, and if you've decided on one of these bids, et cetera, and you want to present that to us, that will be fine, because we are not going to take any official action today, because this is another general meeting. So, thank you very much for your attendance.
My one question would be, would you prefer that red color over the black color? That is so, then we move forward in that direction. I'm just looking for some guidance from.
I mean, so back in the day, if they had a metal roof, it would have been like a turn color like this.
Well, there are options in here that includes a gray.
I personally don't have any problem with black. I just think you should consider in the summer, that's gonna get super hot in there.
But I would prefer another color other than black, whether it's red or whether it's gray. But, you know, that could come as part of the package you bring to us. What the committee and what the commission wants. Thank you. So, without further ado, we'll consider the meeting adjourned. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy.